Welcome. So today is now day 4. So we talked about psychology. We talked about the 3 phases in the market. We talked about market structure yesterday. Now day 4, right? So day 4 is consistent of understanding time frames and understanding a full top-down analysis so you can understand what the actual structure that you are in particular to the time frame, right? So of course I got gold pulled up right here. And then let me move my beautiful face out the way, right? So we can see here, like we spoke about yesterday, that we have structure. So we have impulse, correction, continuation, correction, continuation. So we can see our last higher low point on the monthly time frame was right here, right? So that's something that we need to understand. So when we think about our top-down analysis and understanding our time frame correlation, we want to understand what structure is in what trend. So is the monthly in the uptrend or the downtrend? Is the weekly in the monthly? Is the weekly in the uptrend or a downtrend? Is the daily in the uptrend or a downtrend? Is the 4 hour in the uptrend or a downtrend? Is the 1 hour in the uptrend or a downtrend? And then so forth and so on, right? Now, so we can start here. And then we want to think about the concept that every line that we draw on our chart is supposed to tell us some type of story, right? So we can see here the story here on gold is that in a monthly time frame, this is obviously in a overall uptrend. Why? Because the story is every time that price touches this orange line, it bounced. So if price was to ever make its way back to this orange line again, potentially we could see a bounce and another higher low be formed just like it did previously in the past, right? So on our monthly time frame, we could mark off this area. Now, since we're so far away from this, it's literally at 1618. I don't need to mark this off of my chart because it's literally irrelevant right now. Gold is literally sitting almost at 3,000. So I really don't need to mark it off. I just need to be aware, like, okay, if I was looking for something like a breaker structure on the monthly, it would be right there, right? Now, let's go down to the weekly. Weekly, we want to look for pretty much the same thing. Anything that can tell us a story about the weekly time frame. So we can see here that this was a breaker structure on the weekly time frame. So I could label this as breaker structure weekly because we broke the previous higher highs and then we created new higher highs from this area, right? Now, if we look at structure, we got high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. So on our weekly time frame, our breaker structure for a reversal to go into a downtrend would be right here. So if this gets broken, with the impulse corrects itself, then we know that the weekly is now transitioning to a overall downtrend, right? So I'll label this as my weekly breaker structure. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing for my daily. And of course, I'm still drawing my trend lines. I'm still, looking to see the story on price. The story here is every time price touches this red line, it bounced. And now I can even get closer to price by drawing this trend line right here, right? So now on a daily time frame, if I look at my structure, I got high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. And then even in the midst of this, I will just classify this little higher low point as a smaller time frame structure. So the daily higher low and the weekly higher low is pretty much the same thing, right? Now we can see here that we also had a break of structure here on the daily time frame as well. So this is the last high that previously got broken but never really got retested. So that's something that we need to be mindful of, right? Now let's drive down to our 4 hour time frame. A 4 hour time frame, and one thing I want you guys to understand is that every time you drive down the time frame, you want to get closer to price as possible. So on my H4, I can even draw, this trend line here. And the story is every time that price touches 4 hour trend line, it bounced, and it bounced. So if price was to pull back to this area again, we could potentially bounce, right? But what also do we know? We know that this is our last higher low point on H4. So this will be our H4 breaker structure to the downside. So if we break this low, then that means we're probably going to be looking for sales as long as we get a correction, right? Now remember, if you're brand spanking new to this, make sure that you go watch day 1, day 2, day 3, so forth and so on, because they all go hand in hand. Like, I'm not skipping anything. Like, you won't be able to understand this concept if you did not watch yesterday's video. So make sure that you actually watching yesterday's video, right? So here, H4, this was our breaker structure on H4. We had a brand new impulse that broke structure. Guess what's about to happen, chat? Anytime we get an impulse that breaks structure, we need to see a correction before getting a continuation. So what can we expect on gold? Potentially another correction once we start to see those smaller time frames break structure, so forth and so on, right? Now, coming down here, go down to the 1 hour time frame, pretty much the exact same thing. On our 1 hour time frame, we could see like we could draw this trend line here, point A to point B, but it don't really give us like a super different trend line than that 4 hours, so I really don't need that, right? Now our H1, if we look at our H1 structure, our last higher low point was here. So this would be a breaker structure on H1. Now, of course, I could be labeling these all H1, H4, but I haven't been doing it. But of course, like if you're doing this on your chart, make sure you label them so you know like which one is which. But this was high, higher low, higher high, right? This was our last higher low point on our H1 structure. Now, same concept. We broke this structure here. We never retested. So what should we expect? Price to pull back to continuation, right? So now we're going to do this to the 30-minute structure. 30-minute structure looks like such. We got high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, right? So guess what? This is our breaker structure line right here. So price will need to break, impulse break, correct itself, and then that would let us know that we are now beginning to get that pullback that we were looking for on H4 to pull back into the zone. So it's important to understand the time frame correlations, because once you see this breaker structure on M30, then that lets you know, okay, now we can start to see that main structure pull back on H4. So the smaller time frames will always happen prior to the larger time frames happening, right? So they all go in sequence. So as long as this is being maintained, then we can still look for gold to continue to print a new higher high from here, simply because we understand structure. Price is still in an uptrend. Therefore, we don't have a reason to look for sales just yet until we get a break, a correction, and then a continuation to the downside, right? So it's important when we doing our top-down analysis that we understand what structure is doing on each time frame and what structures are being broken and what structures are being maintained, right? So in this case, structure is still being maintained on the 30-minute. So that means that, like I said, we can continue to look to continue to go higher. So if I had to do a full top-down analysis on this, well, actually I just did a full top-down. If I had to do a projection, I will look for gold to continue to go higher as long as we break this high right here, retest, and continue to print new highs. Or if we break beneath this retest, then we look to sell it down, because this is our first stopping point. This is our first area of resistance inside of the market based off our higher time frame structures, right? So whenever you're doing your top-down analysis, you want to understand time frame by time frame, where are your structure invalidations and where your structure continuations. Remember, breaker structure weekly, this was the same, the weekly and the daily. The breaker structure reversal for the H4, H1, and then 30 minutes. So understanding where each one of those are at will let you know when the time frames are shifting between each time frame, right? So like even if I was to go down to like M5 pretty much the same thing, right? Like pretty much the same thing happening. But if I go to M1, you can see that we had a trend. We had a whole uptrend here that was forming. Higher highs and higher lows. Guess what? Price broke this higher low with a brand new impulse. It corrected, and then we got this continuation to the downside. So if I'm a scalper, just by me understanding this was a breaker structure, corrected, and then continuation, this is my bread right here, my bread and butter. This move right here. And on the 1 minute time frame on gold, this was a quick 180 points, well, 180 pips. So gold is real volatile right now, so that was the easy bag to catch, all by just understanding structure. So time frame by time frame, the most important thing that I can tell you guys to do is just take the time to identify where is your structure invalidated and where is your structure validated for a continuation, right? So in gold, we still have price being maintained structure, so therefore we should be still looking for price to overall continue to the upside, to continue printing bullish momentum and not looking for any sales until we get those breaks of structures, right? So super important for you guys to apply that concept. Like I said, when your top down analysis, every line that you draw on your chart is supposed to tell your story. This is a very simple and concise way of doing a full top down analysis and also correlating your time frames simply by just understanding market structure, which we talked about yesterday. That's why I said it's important that you watch all of the lessons leading up to this, so forth and so on. So drop your comments inside of the comment chat, and I will do whatever I can to get back to you guys. I've been loving the feedback. We are on day 4 of 15, and we have learned so much valuable information that a lot of people wouldn't even teach online for free, right? So just keep showing up, keep back testing, keep doing what you guys are doing, keep studying, keep taking notes, and we will continue this thing, right? So I will see you all again tomorrow for day 5, and let's get this money.